Hey there guys, I'm Renee. I am the owner and artist behind Chicly Reclaimed Decor, and today I'm going to take you through the process of how I transformed this sad and rejected Bombay jewelry box into this beautifully ornate French Baroque Cameo inspired redesign. So if that is something you'd be interested in learning, stick around because that's what we'll be going over today. And if you're new to my channel, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload new tutorials. After thoroughly cleaning this piece, I'm going to prime it to be painted with Couture's 2-in-1 bonding and blocking primer. So like I said earlier, my inspiration for this piece was a vintage cameo jewelry box. So we're going to be using this mold. This is by Iron Orchid Designs, and we're going to be casting it in Couture's new rapid casting resin. We are going to be using their white version, but there is also black available. I love the style of container that these come in because it seems like I'm always spilling. And I'm going to be measuring by weight. So I'm going to put my container on, zero it out, and then I'm going to be measuring out equal parts A and B, and I'm going to mix thoroughly for about 30 seconds before I pour my resin into my mold. My goal today is to inspire you to pick up a paintbrush and do a little creating of your very own. So if I manage to do that, please consider purchasing from my affiliate link below. And in doing so, you help to support my passion, vision, and business venture. So thank you for that support.
2 very boring minutes later.
I've been dying to make that SpongeBob reference, but in all actuality, your resin cast piece is ready to demold after about 10 minutes. I'm going for a very dimensional design with lots of layers. So I'm going to be using this Ciao over the Hedge stencil and Couture's Embossing Medium to add a beautiful raised stencil to the top of this jewelry box. This is a wonderfully thick yet smooth acrylic plaster that's great for creating a raised stencil type design. And I'm using a gloved hand, and I'm just making sure to smooth this product into all the little nooks and crannies on the stencil. And then I'm going to wipe off any excess before I remove this stencil, starting from one direction and pulling upward. So my inspiration behind this design was actually this vintage cameo jewelry box right here. I'm not only trying to recreate the ornate detail that this jewelry box has, but I'm also trying to add an element as if it had one time been gold plated, but it had chipped away as the years had gone by, to reveal maybe a substandard silver medal underneath. And this is what it looked like when I was all done with that step. And a little trick I have to prevent the freshly painted top and bottom from sticking, causing chipping, is I will put a little piece of cardboard in between. I want to add a raised stencil to the sides as well, but it's very curvy, this Bombay jewelry box. So I'm going to be using this Casablanca Stick and Style stencil by Redesign with Prima. This just makes it really easy when you're working on a project that has a lot of curves like this, because it already has a self-adhesive backing. And I'll be adding this stencil on all sides of this little box. Next up, I'm going to be using part of this Queen Bee gilded decoupage paper by AB Studios. I'm going to be using a wet paintbrush to remove this gold wreath from the rest of the rice paper. And I'm just using that paintbrush to trace around the image that I want to remove. And this will allow me to easily and cleanly tear this image away from the remainder of the rice paper. And it also provides a nice feathered edge for this image to cleanly blend into your painted piece. And as you can see down in the left-hand corner, my idea is to layer this cameo mold over top of this rice paper. That way it looks like it's surrounded by a beautiful gold crest. When you're decoupaging, it's really important to lay down a light, preferably white color. I'm going to be using Italian Ivory by Couture. You do this so that way the true colors and the decoupage paper can show through. I'm going to be using Couture's Extreme Guard Gloss Topcoat. The reason I'm using a gloss is because I want to keep the sheen of that metallic decoupage paper. I'm going to be working section by section here. I'm going to start on the right hand side. I'm going to lay down a layer of this Extreme Guard top coat, and then I'm going to lay down my rice paper starting from the middle and pushing outward. Then I'm going to do the same thing over on the left hand side. And then I'm going to finish off by adding the top coat over top, and I'm using a little piece of plastic to smooth out the rice paper to make sure there are no air bubbles. Next up, we're going to be accenting the top with some iFlex wood products. This is their decorative scroll pair number 1353. We are going to be using these to create an elegant border that surrounds this cameo mold. Throughout this video, I'm going to be highlighting how to use these iFlex wood products. But you can definitely cast these pieces out of resin or air dry clay using a variety of silicone molds that are on the market today. I'm going to be marking my molds. This one with a TR, that's supposed to remind me that that mold goes on the top right. This one's going to have a TL, and that reminds me that it goes on the top left, and so on and so forth. And then, just like the rest of the box, I'm going to pre-paint all of these molds with the Italian ivory color. I'm doing this because later on, I'm going to be coming through and painting this piece with some light colored metallic paint, and having this nice white base is going to make it so I get that 2-coat coverage that I want. And we're going to set these aside and come back to them later. Hands down, my absolute favorite mold that iFlex Wood Products produces is their variety of trim moldings. When heat is applied to these molds, they become flexible, making them super easy to wrap around corners or to contour to a variety of different surfaces. As you can see here, I'm heating this roll of trim up with a heat gun, and then I'm just slowly unraveling it. I also just find it very convenient that I don't have to use a silicone mold to cast one piece of trim at a time. I can unroll this trim and cut it to whatever length I may need. As you can see, I've added the trim onto my box, and I'm going to warm it up before I cut it to fit. And then I'm just going to continue on with that process of cutting this iFlex pearl trim to fit on the top of this jewelry box lid. I like to use Titebond Quick and Thick. This is a multi-surface glue, but you can use any wood glue of your choice. I'm going to put a bead of glue on the back and then smooth it out so it's nice and even. Then I'm going to add it to my piece, warm this mold up so it becomes flexible, and I'm going to press it firmly into place, and then I'm going to wipe off any excess glue that may seep out the sides. Now that the top pearl trim is in place, we are going to be using this floral and leaf trim to accent the bottom of this jewelry box. I'm going to be working section by section to warm this trim up and dry fit it to the bottom. Just look at how easy it was for me to wrap this trim around the corner once it was all warmed up. Such a great product. And now that my trim is cooled down and taken on the shape of this bottom, I'm just going to go about gluing it into place. Another aspect that I absolutely love about these iFlex wood products is that you can cut them up and customize them to your design. These little pieces right here, I'm going to be putting on the side. They kind of give it a fleur-de-lis decorative look, and it actually came from this piece of trim from iFlex. If you've been watching my videos for some time now, you've actually seen me use this trim several times. I've used it on a pink blended nightstand. I used it to redesign a French Baroque mirror, and now I'm using the leftover pieces to design this jewelry box. And as you can see here, customizing them is so easy. You just heat them up, and then you just cut them with a nice pair of sharp scissors. And any jagged or uneven edges like this, I'm just going to come through with a piece of 80 grit sandpaper and then a 240 grit sandpaper to sand that so it is nice and smooth. Now that we have our trim on our jewelry box and our molds are all prepared, we are ready to start talking paint. So I'm going to be using Caribbean Coral. This is part of Couture Paint's acrylic mineral line. It's a perfect color for that vintage cameo look. that I'm going for. And I'm going to use it not only to paint the outside, but I'm also going to use it here as a type of glaze. So as you can see, I stippled it over top of the Cameo mold, and then I wiped off any excess with a paper towel. I then used a dry brushing technique over the rest of this mold to bring attention to all the beautiful details. Next up, I'm going to be using Vintage Lace Luxe Metallic as well as Champagne Heavy Metal Metallic Paint by Couture. Remember to thoroughly stir the heavy metal paint because it does have actual metal in it. And I'm going to be taking both of these paints and I'm going to be using them to create a duo-toned blend on these molds as well as the jewelry box itself. I'm using a small artist's brush and a stippling motion to apply this metallic paint to these molds. The stippling dabbing motion just helps me to get into all the little grooves on these intricate detailed molds. I'm doing a two-tone blend because I'm trying to mimic a gold-plated mirror I saw growing up. In some areas, the gold plating had completely chipped off, and in some areas, it was just starting to fade, giving the aged finish a variety of different tones. And that's what I'm trying to mimic here by doing this blend. And remember, you're going for an aged look, so there is no need to stress about getting this blend perfect here. But remember, when you are finishing off, to brush in one direction. That way you have no brush strokes with this metallic paint. This is just our first coat of blended paint. I'm going to be coming in and doing 2 coats. As I said earlier, we put down that nice white base, so we should be able to get that 2-coat coverage. Don't let blending intimidate you, especially when you're working with 2 very similar colors like we're doing here. On the left, I have put down a layer of the Champagne Heavy Metal Metallic, and on the right, I have laid down the Vintage Lace. Now I'm taking a neutral blending brush, or a brush that doesn't have any paint on it, and I'm simply using it to brush in one direction. And then I'm just going to continue on with that process to blend out the rest of this jewelry box. Next up, we're going to start working with our gold leaf. I'm going to be using Couture's Extreme Guard Gloss Top Coat to apply this. I always like to have a nice soft makeup brush and then a little bit stiffer bristled paintbrush. Working section by section, I'm going to lay down a layer of this top coat, and then I'm going to take a piece of the gold leaf and I'm going to press it on top using the soft bristle makeup brush. I like to wait a minute or so the top coat can have time to dry, and then I'm going to come through and remove any excess gold foil with that stiff bristled paintbrush. And remember, you're going for a chippy, aged, distressed look with your gold leaf. So as you can see here, I'm actually coming back and distressing this gold leaf with my finger. And don't be afraid to experiment and play around with how you add your gold foil over top. You can crumple up your leaf before you add it, and it'll add just a different texture to your design. So just let your creative self go wild. And here's an up-close look at what we have down so far. I continued on with that process to add the gold leaf onto the jewelry box, and then I also added the gold leaf onto the iFlex wood molds as well. And of course, I added some to the star of the show, our Cameo mold. And this is the look we have so far after that step. And you've been probably wondering, just when am I going to add these molds onto the jewelry box? Well, after I hand paint the raised stencil design on both the top and the bottom with this beautiful rose gold metallic paint color. I really wanted this jewelry box to look like it was not only plated in gold, but it also had an intricate rose gold detailing. I absolutely love the design element that this adds to this French Baroque inspired jewelry box. After hand painting the rest of the stencil work with the rose gold, we're ready to officially start adding our iFlex wood products onto this jewelry box. And I'm just going to be following the same process that I detailed earlier to heat them up and glue them on. once everything had time to dry, I sealed it with a gloss top coat, and these are the beautiful detailed results. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'm Renee. I'm the owner and artist behind Chicly Reclaimed Decor, and you can follow me for more furniture and home decor flips, as well as painting tips. And I hope I've inspired you to pick up a paintbrush and do a little creating of your very own. And please do like, comment, and subscribe for more DIY YouTube tutorials.